Tell a brief little story. Sitting here just I'm about done with my shit. Tyler's video is sometimes you lose when you win with love magic. Now, there's a reason I'm bringing this shit up, and I gotta say, man, first and foremost, when it comes to love magic, we'll call it love magic, right? Usually it's somebody wanting to get somebody that doesn't necessarily want to be got. The number one recipe, the number one ingredient for failure in that would be, in my opinion, selection of the wrong target. And I'm starting to realize this a lot more in this moment, leading up to this moment, and just, in this moment, just even in hindsight, just even in, just looking through. But I want to tell a very brief story about a woman that I knew of, vaguely knew her. We'll call her Jane, and we'll call her target, the one that she wanted, name was Joe. Jane was a greasy bitch. Let me just put it to you this way. Jane was a greasy bitch, right? When I say greasy, just, kind of like a shade tree bitch. You couldn't really trust her, right? She come from a family of just greasy bitches. You know what I'm saying? Like, just greasy. I mean, all these bitches have been associated and there's, attached to in some form of fashion with niggas getting murdered and killed. And she comes from a family of just mostly like women. And a lot of these women, I mean, as far as like, there was this group of sisters, and all of these sisters at one point in time were prostitutes, and I'm not even downplaying prostitute. If you want to be a prostitute, great. I'm not even judging that. I'm just saying, like, they belonged to the streets. A couple of them rose to heights of success in the streets, pharmaceutically, if you catch my drift, which was kind of rare at the time, and just, they just had this way, and a lot of these sisters were all mixed up genetically wise, so they had this kind of, a lot of them had exotic looks, and this one might have greeny blue eyes, and this one has green eyes, and blah blah blah, whatever that some niggas hoop and holler about. But this Jane was after this Joe, and Joe would sprinkle dick around town. He Joe was a typical kind of dude in that way, although he was into a lot of different shit, as far as just like in the street. But she began wanting to basically own Joe. She liked the way Joe threw that dick, and whether it was she was starting to fall in love, or whether it was just, I want you for myself, I don't want to share type of thing, I'm not quite sure. Maybe it was a mixture of both, So she started working magic on his ass. And Joe fought for a while. I'm talking about up to a year or more. Joe was like, and this particular sister was probably not the hottest of the sisters, right? So you can just tell, like, Joe wasn't gassed by this bitch. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if any of you know or have ever been in a situation or a relationship where or you go somewhere, right? And you see two people in a relationship, and one may be attractive, or maybe they're just but the other's like maybe not so attractive, or you could just tell one isn't feeling the other, or you see them and you say, how in the fuck did that happen? How is she with him, or how is he with her? And usually one of them will have a face like Eddie Murphy said, like, how the fuck this happened? you know, because I do know that women can, and I guess you could say men too. Over time, a persistent woman can wear a man down like drips of water on a rock. They will wear you down. You know what I'm saying? So they start seeing each other more frequently. And I knew somebody who knew her. And she told me that how she would be like, girl, I'm, putting this hoodoo on him and all this shit like that. And and the reason why she told me, and at the time that she told me, I wasn't fucking with the occult, or I wasn't necessarily really interested in the occult. I was more just in the street and really starting to get into mind power, at the same time, I know. So she's telling this other person who comes, and I would talk to her, this other person. And the reason why she would tell me is just because of some of the things that she would do, which y'all have heard of most likely if you follow different, or if you deal with the occult in any type of way, hoodoo, voodoo, anything, then you've heard of some of the things, of course, putting the blood in the food, scraping the dried up, you know, pussy juice off her, you know, drawers and putting it in food, baking things, making shit like that. So they started actually kind of hanging tough, but he would always just kind of be like, when they were together, she would be more touchy. Like she was the one being more kinesthetic, more, more touchy, more feely, contact, connection. Like you could tell when a couple is in love and they're intimate and there's a real connection, because they most likely will be touching each other. They almost can't keep their hands off each other a lot of times. But he never was like that with her, you know? And eventually, I'm talking like over a year, they end up moving or getting a place together. And they're both in the same kind of business. And it wasn't a shock, but it was more of a surprise. Like, this dude could, this dude has a choice of bitches. So, like, why the fuck would you, with her? And over time, though, he apparently started getting more jealous. He had a jealous side. Now, maybe he had an abusive side that just needed the right environment to be able to come out, or the right time. It's one thing to see somebody here and there, hit and miss. I'll catch you in another 2 weeks. I used to do that all the time. My thing was like every 2 weeks. That's about as much as I could stomach one bitch. So you have a rotation and you have this and that. So that way, like if somebody tried to get too close to you, you Heisman them or whatnot. So I don't know whether that was the case. I don't know if he actually started to, I have a feeling that he started also at the same time too, he started kind of opening up to her, which was a big and bad mistake. And maybe, of course, you throw in the magic and you just throw in other things too, factors. And it started being known because she was very messy. When I say messy, I mean this shit. Like a lot of people knew her business. She had like, yeah, can you imagine a dartboard? There's different circles inside of different circles. So there's layers. There's the core shit that she would take to her grave. And then the other circles, maybe 2 or 3 people will know about. Then the other circle, like if I'm hearing about it, then I know a lot of people are hearing about it because I don't fuck with this bitch like that. And, so it began to be known that they would be getting into it a lot. They would be fighting a lot. And like I said, she was loosey goosey as well. She wasn't innocent, you know. I doubt she was faithful. I bet she had her moments of you know, either infidelity or whatever you want to call it. And lo and behold, one night they got into it real bad. She left. I know somebody that knows him, and he was like looking for her and all this shit. And she was like gone for like a day. What she was doing, I don't know. And she comes back to the house, their house. And he ain't left. He's not driving around. He's making calls looking, and maybe he took hit a couple corners to try and see if like is she here, is she there, and to no avail. He didn't find her. So all that is just putting coals in the furnace, the furnace of rage. And so she finally comes home, where he's waiting, and his rage is now turned into this almost a cold heat, a methodical cold heat. Like it's so hot it's cold, or it's so cold it's hot. One of them. Frostburn. All the landlines in the house are ripped out of their sockets. She walks in there. Boom! He hits her with a hand base of a phone and continues to, beat the living dog shit out of her. And he ended up leaving and actually left her for dead. But she didn't die. Of course, somebody had happened to stop by, and I forgot who it was, how it was. Somebody got in the house and happened to find her laid the fuck out, head all busted open and shit. And, she was in the hospital for a very long time. And I'll just put it this way, is not the same. Doesn't talk the same, doesn't, she still tries to do her hoe shit. But it's kind of funny with a hoe, excuse me, who thought like then and like, I believe wears a diaper. Not the same. Not the same. So my point is, she made this man her target and was consistent and was constant with her, always trying to, and just kept holding on. And it's like, in the end, it's like the worst thing that can happen is she got what she wanted. I'm just saying this because in love magic, there are no guarantees. Love, as great and as glorious as it is, even if only one person has it for the other, in my humble opinion, it still can be a very chaotic force, meaning you can't control it. You can't control how things crystallize or manifest, or how strong or how light it gets, as much as, you can't control that part. And there has been cases where, of course, clients that the root of the problem is a bad choice in a selection of target. You have to be like a lawyer. And I've said this plenty of times before. You got to be like a lawyer, in my opinion. Now, what I mean by that is a lawyer who's worth his weight in salt, who has a reputation, who wants to maintain his reputation and build and expand his reputation, is not going to take cases that he knows he's going to lose. And sometimes, especially for some of you spiritual workers, you already know what I'm talking about. Because sometimes you'll just get a feeling like this shit like is bad news. It's just bad news. And I'm not trying to be judgmental, but it's like a feeling that I get. And I'm sure many of you, if you've done love work for somebody else or anything, you've gotten it too, you know? And I'm not saying not to do love work. I'm not saying that all this happened because she used magic, because there's a lot of scary motherfuckers out there too who are too brainwashed by the Hollywood narrative of what magic is and how it works and blase. So they have this thing in their psyche like, if I don't do everything right, or because you're using magic at some point in time, you've got to pay. Something's going to go wrong. You know what I'm saying? Or whatever the scary bullshit is. And maybe sometimes it ain't bullshit, you know? Yes, sometimes you can cause something else that you didn't intend to, or sometimes, you know, there are adverse effects. But I believe that that is more so from ignorance or from plain old not knowing of what you don't know. If I don't know shit about electricity, I've used this analogy before, and I say, I can fix your plug, but I really don't know much about electricity, I might make the fatal mistake of trying to work on that plug before turning off the power of the whole house, or forget to, because this ain't my thing. I don't continually do this. So when some people venture off and start doing love work on their own, if you are scary in any type of way, I would suggest sticking to prayer and novenas, which also could be said to be another form of magic. But if you're scary about magic or, you know, all that type of things, I just wouldn't fuck with it if I was you. The other thing, like I said, though, is the wrong choice in mate. Now, whether you're using magic or whether you just, that's something you always have to be assessing, calibrating. People do change. It's possible when you got together, y'all was a perfect match. But now, he might have grown this way, you might have grown that way. And the shit now that used to be, that used to feed both of you, now is draining both of you. The shit that used to be maybe something creative or beautiful is now turning toxic and destructive. You know? So sometimes you lose when you win with love magic. Peace.